Welcome to 3D. Today is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. I am your rapporteur, and this is the Daily Dossier. Global headlines. Le Pen's decade of legal peril. The request for a 5-year public office ban centers on the EU assistance scandal. Prosecutors argue the National Rally ran a centralized system to pay for 20-plus party employees, using 6.8 million euros in EU parliamentary funds. This isn't just a fine. If the ban is upheld, Le Pen, the 2027 frontrunner, is legally decapitated from the race. Tenet's strategic divorce. The finalized sale of a 25.1% stake in the German grid to KfW for $3.3 billion ends a 17-year expansion. In 2009, Tenet bought the German grid, E.ON, for $1.1 billion. While once a European energy bridge, the 2026 cost of offshore wind integration became a $25 billion burden, forcing the Dutch to retreat to domestic sovereignty to protect their own taxpayers. Takaishi versus the Bank of Japan. The markets are watching the Abe protege clash with central bank independence. Takaishi is weaponizing the LDP's supermajority to prevent the Bank of Japan from raising interest rates. She argues that Sanaenomics, high spending, low rates, is the only way to fund the military expansion Abe envisioned before his assassination. Repatriation of the disparate. 4,800 refugees have returned from Uganda to Port Sudan. They are returning via corridor flights through Port Sudan because regional camps in Chad and South Sudan have seen a 400% increase in food prices and a complete collapse of medical supply chains. To these refugees, the risk of a RSF drone strike is statistically lower than death by starvation in a camp. The Ojiji Vigil Rescue. Police have confirmed the rescue of 9 youth from St. John's Catholic Church in Benue. The kidnappers, led by local warlord associate, utilized the cover of a 2 a.m. prayer vigil. The rescue operation by the Operation Zenda unit involved a 6-hour jungle pursuit, indicating that the kidnappers had no permanent base and were operating as a high-mobility hit-and-run squad. The $40 billion budget stalemate. As opposition parties block the $1.25 trillion defense budget, the Trump option has emerged. Washington is reportedly floating a sovereign debt transfer model where the U.S. provides the hardware now and Taipei pays later via specialized trade tariffs. It's a move to bypass Taipei's internal gridlock and maintain the Pacific deterrence wall. Memory wars. Samsung and SK Hynix are lobbying the U.S. Department of Commerce for legacy exemptions. They are arguing that their 2025 investments in Texas and Indiana should pre-clear them from the 2026 AI chip export controls. They want to be treated as a domestic U.S. entity rather than a foreign Tier 2 partner. Olympic Cyber Shield. The Rome Cyber Command for Milan Cortina has identified digital sabotage as a Tier 1 risk. Following the Olympic destroyer malware in 2018, Italy has spent $450 million on a decentralized cloud for the 2026 Games to ensure that a hack on one venue, like Cortina, cannot shut down the broadcasting or scoring systems in Milan. The Civic Void. Captain Traore's dissolution of all political parties is being framed as national cleaning. By dissolving over 100 parties, the junta is attempting to recreate the 1983 revolutionary model of Thomas Sankara, but without the popular grassroots base. It is a pure survival state move to ensure no domestic opposition can challenge Russia's growing security influence. The transitional crisis. Protests in Caracas are targeting the U.S. military council deal. Since the January 3 extraction of Maduro, the U.S. has prioritized order over democracy, working with high-ranking Chavista generals to keep the oil flowing. The Democratic opposition feels they have been traded for stability, sparking today's largest protest in 6 weeks. Deepwater 07 extraction. The NOC Repsol deal for the Benghazi Deepwater block is the first of its kind in 17 years. The contract allows Repsol to bypass the Libyan Coast Guard for their own site security, effectively creating a corporate maritime zone that the state cannot enter. Asfira's legitimacy row. Protests against President Nasri Asfira are centering on the Mar-a-Lago Pact. Critics argue Asfira's January 27th inauguration was bought with a promise to the U.S. to accept mass deportations in exchange for the JOH pardon. Today's protests in Tegucigalpa were met with private security contractors, not just police. The 750 kV node strike. Ukraine's hit on the Novobryanskaya substation has crippled heating for 450,000 people. By targeting the 750 kV transformers, which are massive and take months to replace, Ukraine is utilizing industrial paralysis to force Russia to divert air defense from the front lines to protect domestic power grids. The MSC pivot to Ankara. Following the Munich conference, Berlin has signaled a historic thaw with Turkey. With the U.S. pivoting to the Pacific, Germany views Turkey as the only regional power capable of containing Middle Eastern instability and acting as a gas hub for the 2027 winter. The Geneva enrichment offer. Indirect talks mediated by Oman started with a high-stakes proposal. Tehran is offering to cap enrichment at 20%, down from 60+%, if the U.S. releases $12 billion in frozen assets. Simultaneously, the IRGC's great profit drills in the Persian Gulf are a reminder that they can unplug the global energy market if the offer is rejected. Postal counterfeit trace. The $1.2 billion seizure has been traced to Operation Decoy 3. Europol identified that the fake euros were being shipped from China disguised as educational materials. Portugal's role as a gateway is due to a 2024 postal automation treaty that reduced manual inspections for Asian parcels. The tourism blackout. As jet fuel runs dry and Canadian flights cease, the Cuban government has declared a special period in tourism. They are attempting to shift focus to maritime arrivals from Russia and China, but without aviation links, the $3 billion tourism industry, the island's only remaining lung, is effectively dead. Global thread. The corporate sovereign hybrid. Today's headlines reveals a new pattern. Corporate sovereignty. From Libya allowing Repsol to run its own navy, to the U.S. prioritizing oil stability over democracy in Venezuela, to the Netherlands selling infrastructure to protect its bank account. The world is being run like a balance sheet. This was the Daily Dossier. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment.